Hey, you guys, welcome back for another chapter of sociology.
How do I do this in a way that I can deliver in a fair amount of time for you to watch it and take it in, but also do it the justice of giving it space to be as interesting as it should be?
I was giving instructions. I watched Rosa walk away from the camera.
Exactly.
And
She did walk away.
like,
She did walk away from the camera.
bathroom or whatever she was doing. And then, of course, she comes back.
I won't go first.
Whatever
Go ahead.
you want to say, Rosa. Whatever you want to say about yourself.
Okay.
You should go first, Rosa.
Yeah, now
Yeah, we should. As a matter of fact, Rosa, why don't you start us off?
There you go. There you go.
Or Roland, because this is room launch courtesy of Roland.
I think Roland should go first. I nominate Roland.
All right, so I'm gonna be real quick about it. My name is Roland Fouché. I am a community activist, and I'm happy to be a part of this get together.
Maybe we could add also how you identify either racially, ethnically, or both, if you're willing to share that.
Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. I identify as a Haitian American.
My name is Ismalis Nunez. Identify, pronouns she, her, hers. I racially identify as a U.S. Black American, culturally and ethnically as Puerto Rican and Cuban. So a Black Puerto Rican and Cuban American, not biracial. And I am a woman, activist, and a warrior.
My name is Rosa, and I identify as Afro-Latina. My parents are from the Dominican Republic. She, her, hers.
I am Sandy, she, her, hers. I am a Haitian American, and I work in the field of domestic violence.
Steve, he, him, his, and I identify as a white Jewish American man. Work at the Infant Welfare Society of Evanston, and I'm glad to be in this conversation.
Awesome. Well, thanks you guys for joining.
Of
Yeah.
course. Katie, what the second part was of your question was directed to Roland and I as well. Can you state that part?
It was actually, as I thought I was saying it, it actually goes back to something as Molly said earlier, which was when Rosa was telling the story, as Molly said, I don't want to forget that your ex is a white man and what that means. And I would love for her to talk more about what she means by that, because this is a very central concept that our chapter covers.
Absolutely. I'm going to sum that up because as I'm hearing you two as Black men speak and a white man who is Jewish, right? Whether they're religiously or both, right? I heard something that you both all just said, and I heard white supremacy, white racist patriarchy rooted in white male dominance. And what I mean by that is this whole notion of softness where that came from and male toxicity that has been uprooted in our communities of color. Because Steve, you said something so poignant. I know for a fact, as a woman of color, in my soul, I know better than that. My ancestors know better than that, because we didn't believe in this whole gender identity role. And so I even watch family members of mine call people they love patos and maricones. And that ain't nothing but hate. And that's the lack of humanity that is there. And so that's why I believe that healing is so important, because that white male dominant, it culturally, and it don't matter if you're a white man, because you could be a black man swimming in that, but you get caught up in it like a crab in a bucket. And I hear also in our communities of color, I'm a part of a Black community and a Latinx community. As a woman, I was also told, you better go handle that shit. And if not, don't come home till you do that. That's in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I learned that from a mother. A mother who was 5'0". And so I don't want to either get caught up in these oppression Olympics either, because that's what white male dominance does. And that's what our country's been built on. That and capitalism.
This is true. Let me just say this real quick. So this is true. Everything you said was true, as Molly's. The individual who taught me to, address the situation as it comes up was my mom. She was the beast in the family. She was the beast in the family. She told me. I remember like it was yesterday. Kid, I had to be like 9, 10 years old. Kid messing with me. I'm not cursing, Katie. So just to let you know. I
invited you to curse. I don't know what I can do.
But
they're adults.
So, kids mess with me, blah, 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 this, that, and the other. I come to her, saying that's mom, blah, blah, blah. She gonna come for me, do this, that, and the other.
Could you actually say what you said? Because I think it's very important to hear the actual words.
What you mean?
When you're talking about your conversations, she says blah, blah, blah. Are you editing or are you...
That's some black shit, Katie.
That's stereotypical shit right there.
That means and so on. So I came to my mom and I'm expecting her, she gonna come for me. She told me to go back and come at this individual and address him the way that he's addressing you. So I get what you're saying, Ismailis, but if the people who are raising you are teaching you these methods or whatever, that's who you're going to be. That's who you're going to be. And it doesn't. And I get the male masculinity piece, but this is my mama. This is my.
But I gotta jump in. Hold on, Ismailis, please.
I just have a question for both of you.
Molly's got some notes down there. I see her taking notes.
Ready.
It's a question. See, and this is exactly why I said what I said when we intro. Because the conversation about race gets turned into a right or wrong, and I'm not here to be right, and I just need you to hear something. Hold on. It's not an argument. I'm affirming everything you're saying. And my question to you two black men and to everybody on this call, whether your mom raised you, your grandma, your auntie, whoever, and that's what they've instilled in you, my question is, how are you about to disrupt that narrative now?
So real quick, before I answer that, I gotta make my comment. I mean, hold on, because Ismailis' point was it was her mom. He reaffirmed it was his mom.
A little bit.
I just wanted to add 2 cents. It wasn't my mom. It was my dad who told me, get your ass out there and defend yourself, right? The point is, every black mother in the neighborhood absolutely. You think my mother wasn't right there standing next to my father's? Like, I'm glad I didn't have to say that shit. Get your ass out there and defend yourself. I'm just trying to, I don't know a black mother who wouldn't tell their kid to get their ass out there and defend themselves. I needed to add that. That's all I wanted to say. I'm reaffirming you all's, my own personal experience. That's all I wanted to do.
No, I know. And I think it's always a both and I personally don't want to get stuck on a call.
Yeah.
Where people of color continue to stereotype a group of people of color. It's your experience. And so just because I don't say your mom wasn't ride or die doesn't mean it didn't happen.
Okay.
That's what I'm, that's it.
I just needed that, add that to. Now, going back to your, how are we going to currently, what did you say?
Are you going to disrupt the narratives you learned?
Well, it obviously, it comes with maturity. Let's first say that. So as I matriculated into adulthood and started to make life decisions on my own, I made a conscious decision to not be who my father was, first of all. And, if you give me a minute, let me share. My father was raised through the civil rights movement. He was one of 9 children. My aunt, his sister, got stabbed in the back 4 times by 4 white men who got acquitted during the trial. And being drafted to go to Vietnam, my father absolutely, his experience, he hated white people and raised me that way. So I need to give that background. And so in my childhood, I grew up in an all-black neighborhood, all-black businesses, the whole thing. And so when I got to high school and I really started to interact with white people, I just had a balance to me that wasn't as extreme as my father. Thank God, because of my mother, I had both sides of it. No, you got to be that, you understand? And so I made my own decisions as I matriculated into adulthood and started to make friends. My best friend, one of my best friends today, is a white guy that I played football with, and they called us Black and White Lightning. It was crazy. He was Black Lightning and I was White Lightning because we were so thick as thieves. Like, we shared gym shoes, we were playing ball, typical, all that kind of stuff. But our teammates called us Black and White Lightning because of our friendship. And it was just, and so for me, changing the narrative has been about judging individuals in life. As long as they treat me fair and treat me right, I have no reason to hold any kind of hatred or disregard for them unless they treat me. Hell, I hold disregard for some Black people because of how they treated me. Do you understand what I'm saying? And their ill intent. If you show no ill intent to me, I don't show any towards you. But I'm smart enough and wise enough to understand still how the world perceives me, right? I have experienced blatant racism. I think all of you on this call have heard it, being pulled out of my car as a 20-year-old, right? You all have heard that story before. I have experienced enough, but I have not letting that harden my heart toward people of a different race. I just
can I ask a clarifying question?
Judge people individually.
So can I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
And I'd like to say something before I roll off too.
I appreciate that. And I'm sorry that has been your experience because I don't know what that's like. I don't. And I can't even sit here and fathom it, but I've heard it. And I'm sorry that has been your experience.
I appreciate it.
My question.
I've healed.
My question for you and to Roland, to be a little bit more specific, and to Steve, as men, because when I think about the comment I said and still trying to make this connection, then how do you start to disrupt the narrative of softness and anti-homophobia within our communities of color? within white dominant communities, right? And so that's my question.
Okay. I'm gonna let Roland and Steve, I'm gonna come back. Y'all,
Before you answer that, I have to go. So I just want to just put the added layer in there is that we're talking about individual experiences, but there's a whole system that feeds into all of this. So I think disrupting it is not that easy. Like I think about how I'm raising my children. My children, you guys know, most of you know this, my children are adopted. One is completely Black, one is biracial. She is Puerto Rican, she's Italian, and she's African American. And how am I going to do that? How am I going to tell that story? And you know, they're going to go out, just the two of them are going to have different experiences based on who they are. And so I think I have my personal stories, I have the way that I'm wanting to raise them, but then there's the system, there's the real life experiences. And so all of that is going to be built into it. And so sometimes we can't help but get wrapped up into continuing a cycle because of what's happening around us.
And that's it, Sandy. And you just said it, Mama. So you're doing that exactly right. You're creating space for them to end your stories, and you're an individual in a system. And so I believe the more you can model that, the more you empower other Black women that look like you to do the same, so that when the systemic bullshit comes up, we don't lay on our backs like we have been doing.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and Sandy, I appreciate that, because of my first thing when Joaquin made that comment to me on our walk, I wanted to be like, well, your dad's a white man, right? Your dad's a white man, so he doesn't get it. He doesn't.
Right.
And so what I tried to convey to him was that his experience is very different than most people out there, than my experience, than your experience is going to be, than most of the people out there, as opposed to trying to attack him, because that's, of course, on so many levels, that's the first thing I want to do. But I have to remember, like, everybody's experience is different, and his experience, I know that. His experience is very different. I benefited from that experience.
But you can't be bound by your experience either. Like, I'll tell you, as a white man, as a white Jewish man, I've had to own my own family's racism, my own family's prejudices as a Jewish family. I've had to, you know, again, it's my own experience, right? I'm not equating it to anyone else's experience, but I had to understand all that shit, and it's hard to own some shit, you know, and you have to go through that process as a white man of privilege, you know, and it's a process that I wouldn't equate to anyone else's challenge or struggle in figuring all this shit out. But I know for me, and as Molly said it before too, it's a life journey of understanding self and others. And I've tried to find that there's a deeper piece of it too that I think we don't like to talk about. I would say it's our soul. It's our who we are in a human in this form, right? And so I think race is a tough issue to talk about, and I see it manifesting, like I said, in how my kids express it, and especially, like I said, Camila. But how I grapple as a white man with when you say, "Oh, he's a white man," I can't deny that that's not hurtful to me a little bit, because I am a white man. I'm a white Jewish man, but you know, fuck it. I understand a lot of white men are fucked up, and
but his,
so I have to own that
level, his experience or where he's at is very differently where you're at. And so if I'm trying to meet people where they're at, I need to meet him where he's at. He's never going to be where I want him to be.
Well, I would ask him how he identifies.
What?
Help him talk through how he identifies. Who are you? Like, talk to him.
An American. He's an American. He's a red.
This is just it. No one, Steve. I want people to talk about their soul, but how can people talk about their soul and who they are if we don't know? If you could have no capacity or knowledge about who you are as an individual and where you've come from, but it's only told one way in the books, then you start to manifest and start to believe this shit, right? I've had to do a lot of work. And I listen, one of the things that I've had to go through on a shitty journey with complete all white girlfriends. Okay, you talk about the one that sticks out. Grand Rapids, Michigan. At the end of the day, as I've gone through my journey as a Black woman in my racial consciousness, I don't hate white people, but I also have to hold the white people in my life accountable when they say some fucked up shit.
Yeah.
You being around black and brown folks don't mean you get to put braids in your hair, and I'm not going to tell you don't touch my shit.
But Smallies, that also comes to a point of like
That's
knowing,
me. That's
like,
me.
and I appreciate that. I appreciate that completely. But you know that for me, it's also a point of like when things happen, thinking it's in my head. Like I'm being too sensitive.
That's your healing, and that's a personal journey.
And it is. And I've come there. I mean, it's taken me a long time to get there and to realize like these experiences, no, like what I felt was real. What I felt was, you know, it was my experience.
Yeah.
But in the moment, it's the justification of like, well, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is.
But see, I'm sorry. Sandy, you gotta go. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I keep saying I have to go, but I have one more question. So
She ain't gotta go. She ain't gotta go.
I was supposed to go. I mean, I thought my kids would be back, and since they're not here, it just keeps rolling out. But so back to what Smallies was saying. So do we always have to speak up, though? Do we always have? I think that's the part that feels exhausting to me. Like it's, you know, as a black woman, when someone says something out of pocket, now I have to correct you every time. Like
you don't though. And so part of why talking about race is not exhausting for me, and it was something I was doing 5 days a week, traveling on top of that, and white men slamming their hand down, telling me, homegirl, back that up. Like if I carried all that hate with me, I wouldn't be able to look at Steve. And so what I have learned is I have to set boundaries on who I can have conversations with, because not everyone has the capacity, the skill, the will, or the knowledge. So I don't burn myself out on bullshit.
I agree with that.
So one of the
What's Lawrence, you go ahead.
Yeah, so I mean, Ismaili said a whole lot, and I appreciate you know, because, you know, I'm going back to the original question of how we disrupt cycle. And I was thinking, you know, coming in on Rosa's story about her son, I think as parents, and Steve even knows, Steve had biracial children. As parents, what I tried to do, unlike my father, Ismailis, who didn't tell me to hate white people, but made it crystal clear where he drew the line.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
What he did tell me was, don't trust him. And he I can hear his voice today, God bless his soul, don't ever trust white people. But I heard that, and I said, and as I, you know, it has always been in me, but as I started to have kids, and as I raised my children, especially my son, has had to educate. You talked about, you know, there's this individual thing, but then there's the systemic piece that we got to deal with. And so from the system side of things, I have tried to prepare my son as early as, you know, 11, 12 years old, when I started to let him go to friends' houses, walk to people's houses. I tried to talk to him about the system in a way so that he's prepared and giving him tools. And what was that? That talk meant be submissive to the police or to authority. Don't challenge them. You know, always keep your hand, you know, the things to protect yourself so you can get back home kinds of things. And so the conversation over the years, he's now 22, and he is as argumentative as they come. And it doesn't mean, and that's with authority or not, or his mama and me. You understand what I'm saying? It's the man, you can feel free to challenge authority in the right environment, in the right setting, because in some point, you are still looked at as, what I can't have you be as the angry black man.
All right.
Understand what I'm saying? You have got to be able to articulate your what you disagree with, what you, you know, with whomever your audience is, but you got to do it in a way that it doesn't come off and you get labeled, and then, which can now, you know, turn into some other things, right? If that is in in a university setting, if that's the professor not liking you or something like that, or even when you haven't done nothing wrong and you get pulled over. You understand? You got to, the goal is get your ass home and get out of that situation.
So my question goes back to this. Gender. That's, so my daughter, so I'm talking. Whoa. Hold on a minute. You didn't hear my question then.
Hey.
Hold on, for real.
Hey, I'm after Lawrence.
Hold on a minute. Hold on a minute.
I'm after Lawrence.
Hold on. I think you need to go. Lawrence, take a break. Because my question was, how are you disrupting the narrative about gender dynamics and disrupting it about white patriarchy, meaning homophobia, the soft bullshit, and the fact that you just raised your voice to a black woman, and I'm trying to understand where that came from.
Who, me? I raised my voice. Did I raise my voice?
I didn't hear it.
I was just telling my story. Stop, Ismail. Now let's not go there. All I did is tell my story. Hey, homophobia. So
everybody jump back. I'm just saying.
So let me say this.
Ismail, let him speak his speech.
Because you asked about the gender issue.
So when you're talking about gender issues, I'm gonna admit that I was guilty of raising my kid to not be soft. Do you understand? So I repeated the cycle, right? And I didn't realize that until I became more educated.
What do you mean you raised them not to be soft? Because what does that have to do with?
I mean, I'm sorry. The stereotypes, the things that we talked about earlier. Don't somebody punk you in the streets. Don't you, instead of, hey man, you ain't got to engage, walk away. Do you understand what I'm saying? I didn't raise my son that way. And so that's where I think Ismailis is trying to get to. But if I could do it again, I would absolutely give him that, say, look, you have always got to defend yourself, but you don't have to engage either. You have a choice to walk away. And so I didn't give him the option. I told him to defend himself. That's what I did. And that's okay, because that rewind the clock 10, 12 years ago, I didn't have this knowledge that I have today. Do you understand what I'm saying? And so I'm okay. And thank God he's aware, because he has his mother to balance him, just like I had my mother to balance me against my father. So she provides that balance when you talk about taking power away from, the homophobia-ness, the being soft. I mean, his mother is exactly the one who has told him, walk away. He's never heard those words out of my mouth, though.
But I'm asking you directly as a black man,
do
you, or how have you disrupted this notion of homophobia in the black community as an individual? Are you going around here talking about gay people, judging them? Like, is that an open conversation?
Not.
That's what I'm asking.
So of course I'm not doing that at 49 years old. You understand? Yeah. But I ain't always been 49 and this mature. Have I been guilty of that? Yes.
That's all I'm asking.
I'm guilty of that. But that was 30 years ago.
And so I'm asking about now, though.
Of course not. I'm gonna shut up. Go ahead, Roland.
I know I am, because I have family members, Lawrence, that still use the language around me. And I have to make a decision if I'm gonna stand in my purpose to separate myself. So the last couple of Christmases, I have packed my fucking bags by the door and have told my family members who I adore and love, if the N-word gets dropped, I am leaving, because I have a 3-year-old nephew who is black and is beautiful. And he has to understand that the people who love him the most, if they use that, they don't love him. And it's a cruel world. So why does he have to experience the both and? I'm disrupting that in my house.
Fair enough. I got you.
So that's what I'm asking.
From a homophobia perspective.
Let me take a stab at it. So you talk about, the issue of gender and homophobia and disruption. You know, I would agree with Lawrence that when I was younger, I didn't have the sense of understanding.
I get that, but I'm talking about right now.
What I'm saying is, what I do now is I have raised 3 children that I think are, hey, Rosa, are like,
Hey, Rosa, welcome back.
are like, blow my mind how open they are to the world around them. And I don't think it's just their generation. I think how Marlene and I raised them. That, you know, Camila expresses her biracial self, and, you know, Alex and Olivia talk about themselves as being heterosexual, but they got friends of different, you know, different places, different pieces, and they don't even think about it the way I thought about it when I was 18, to be honest. So it's very different now, but I think how have I, in the moment with my children, made a difference is by speaking with my wife and with my children about it, and like being really open about it. And my wife and I happen to think very similarly in that, you know, we are not quote unquote conservative, you know, people. We're people that, you know, believe that, you know, and I think we've actually created a world around us that is multiracial and that is comfortable for our children, for us, and all that kind of shit. So I don't know, that's what I've done, is help. My wife and I have tried to raise 3 beautiful kids that are open, positive, sensitive, strong in character. You know what I mean? Like all that shit. Like they should defend
Have they taught you stuff about gender, Steve?
Huh?
Have they taught you stuff? Like you said something so dope. Like you're like, yo, they're talking about stuff I never knew about, right?
Yeah, they educate me all the time.
Taught you stuff, you know what I'm saying?
I talk to community to be like, oh, you got to say, I can't. Honestly, it's difficult sometimes with all the language lingo.
Yeah.
And, you know, I got a real good friend. Hey, it's Marlene.
Hey, I heard.
Hey.
Hey.
Let me come up here.
Come on, you might as well come in. Shit.
Hey, Smallies, Joaquin talked to me about gender a couple months ago, and he was telling me about his one friend who's like gender fluid, and his other friend who identifies as, I mean, he just used the pronouns. We talked about all of that, and he looked at me and he was like, how do you know this? And I was like,
that's
dope. The thing is, again, that conversation, he tried having that conversation with his father, and his father kept asking like probing questions about like, well, why is it that? And why is it this? And why does it matter? And so for him, realizing that I knew what he was talking about, because he was like, this is my friend so-and-so who identifies as gender fluid. And we talked about like children who identify as like trans, you know, and he talked about his one friend who is but hasn't told her parents, and it just was, it was a very interesting conversation. And he's 12, right? And I was like, look at you, like it's just
he's gonna bring that friend around more so than his father. And I'll say, like, kids are teaching me a lot about gender.
Yes.
And I have to be open to that because, like I said, I was brought up in a house that was homophobic, yo. And so this is, I'm doing a lot of work.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I gotta just make sure I don't have the cancer that white supremacy has instilled. So
But
that's
see,
what I'm doing for everybody on this conversation.
Yeah. Steve,
But it's not just race, it's gender identity. It's so many
understood.
it's identities that we all hold.
Yes.
Steve and Rosa both used the examples of their kids, and I didn't think about it until they both mentioned it. But you know, you guys both know both of my kids are in college, and the shit that I'm learned from them, they're the ones who are changing my old school narrative or mentality. Like I say, I walk around, I know, you know, the things we used to say in a you know, in our maleness 30 years ago, we absolutely, you know, and Steve kind of alluded to this, as we've gone older and become more educated and sensitive to the world that we live in, we now know we can't use the same type of language. But I never thought of it in a sense until them two just said it. It's been my kids that have also been a big educator to me, because they have brought 14-year-old gender neutral kids in the house, right? And they have brought, you know, their friends is everything from white Jewish to biracial to African in the house because we live in that kind of community. And so, not that I had, from an ethnicity point or a racial point, I didn't have those issues, but the gender thing, and some of you have heard me say this, I know that's been a weakness of mine to learn the language.
Because you come from a place of privilege.
I have facilitated seed and had to say to this group, this is an area, when we talk about gender, I am absolutely know that I am still growing in.
Guess what? That's what I want white people to say.
And so I don't have a problem admitting that to this group or in front of the 22 people that was in my seed group. I'm okay with that. But I'm sensitive to know that the world we live in and to change the white, predominantly male thought process that we've all been experiencing by the system has to change. And so we've got to be wise enough to understand that and understand, for me as an individual, I've got to do better. I got to listen to my kids. I got to understand what people are saying to me and become and learn how to grow in that area. So that, I'm okay with that, and I get it, and I appreciate Steve and Rosa both sharing that because it triggered for me the same thing that my children has taught me as well. And that I learned in a room by going through seed with, with individuals who are gender fluid, and facilitating seed with individuals who are gender fluid. So that's so.
Can I ask you for a commitment?
Bump the system.
Can I ask you for a commitment?
Yeah.
No, I'm on some real shit. I'm on some real.
1738.
No, bro, Crown XO, man. You see, I'm almost down to. We gotta go get a refill.
And that's the commitment. That's the commitment.
That's the commitment. Here's my question, and
commitment, because I'm yes.
Is this for Lawrence or
this is for all?
Me and you get down like this, so
this is for all of y'all, because this is, if we are going to think about what a new world looks like.
Yeah.
I have a belief. I have a belief that it is possible. If we on this call, I hold you all in accountability and each other. So when toxic masculinity comes up, I need men to start holding men accountable.
Right.
Okay? And so when the faggot shit starts coming out, and I shouldn't even be saying that, right? Like, I need y'all to start having a conversation of like, what do you mean by the word soft? Not just ignore it, right? It's It's what I want white allies to do, white co-conspirators, right? And just as like you said about, that's what you say as a Black male about gender and identity. It's not just identity, it's expression, it's sexuality. I just want you to make that commitment to yourself and the broader community, because I have a belief if I don't do that, then everybody gets sick.
But Smallies, before you can hold someone else accountable, don't you need to hold yourself accountable?
That's what I said. You got to hold yourself and others accountable.
Okay.
But that's the healing work. Yeah. I know the issues I deal with gender identity, expression, and sexuality. That's my shit. Not to hear lecture everybody about it, but to work on it and make commitments so that I disrupt a bullshit system so that my nephews can grow up questioning the shit that they hear me say, because that's the new way of being. And so I heard you say something beautiful about kids and you being 49. Let's think about ageism, y'all. Because I get dismissed so much because people don't think I've had experience because I'm young.
Well, and it's the other way around, right? It's the other way around. If you're like too old, right? Or if you're
there you go. But that's all whiteness.
Steve, we some good looking 49-year-olds. What they talking about, bro?
Can I ask you a question?
50.
52.
All right, Black don't crack.
That's right.
It's Molly's. Can I ask a question? It's Molly's.
Did you answer my question?
Oh.
Hey. Oh, you as a Black man,
you asked like 10 questions.
Patriarchy.
I'm not taking notes. Damn. Let
me
get these questions done.
Is it 1 or 11?
Go ahead, Ro.
So Ismaili, so my issue, I totally agree with everything you're saying. You know what I'm saying? You have to understand a individual's turmoil and an individual's oppression, this, that, and the other.
Yes.
So one of my issues, and you know what? I'm open to anything anyone has to say after I say this, but my issue is the fact that everybody equates their struggle with the Black struggle. Some people have the audacity to say that their struggle is worse than the Black struggle. Now, my issue is the fact that I don't get a choice. I don't want a choice. I don't want a choice. But when I wake up, I have to address everything that comes with being Black. Okay. Now, when you bring up the topic of bisexual, everything else, they don't have to. They can address it when they feel as though they need to address it. I have to address it. Anyone who is in a struggle with their identity, but my color, the color of my skin, doesn't allow me that luxury. Every time I wake up, whether or not I'm tired, whether or not I'm ready for the fight, I have to fight, period. If a person...
Question, I love that. I don't have a choice to opt the fuck out either when I wake up every single day. And not even more so now that I have chosen to wear my hair naturally curly.
Woo, I love it.
That I hear from the people that I love in my family. And this was the first thing that people said. The men in my family, that hair, you looked better when it was straight. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm talking about. White dominant US culture, we are all swimming in. And the issue that I struggle with, it is passed on. So I just ask you, with that struggle that you have, understand that this isn't the oppression Olympics, because there are Black folks that look just like you and I in the fucking struggle that don't have a choice and can't control who they love, how they want to dress, but you got a system telling them how to do that shit.
Ooh. Ooh.